Hi, I'm in volume 8 of the Bible story. This is my 8th book from the Bible story by Arthur S Maxwell, or Arthur Maxwell. On the all my whole set is blue. They're about 70 years old. This has a representation of Jesus. Yeah, I know. He looks like he's a Celtic person, but um, that's just their representation. And then he's talking to a group of people. There's these right here on the front, and then on the back, there's many, many more. And oh, I see what this is. This is the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Yeah, that's what the front of it is. It's when he fed the 5,000. Okay, so that's volume 8, and we're at part 2, story 8, glimpse of the kingdom. Okay, one day Jesus said a very strange thing to his disciples. There will be there'll there'll be soon there'll be some standing here that will which shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Interesting, huh? You can imagine how they must have looked at each other and wondering what he meant and who the favored ones would be. Did he mean that before all the disciples did he mean that before all the disciples should die, he would begin his reign as king of love in all the world? Okay. If so, how wonderful. Okay. I know I did robot. It's hard for me sometimes to read out loud. But Jesus didn't mean that at all. He had something else in mind. As it turned out, the favored ones were Peter, James, and John. Jesus took them off by themselves and led them up a high mountain, possibly Mount Hermon, yeah, possibly Mount Hermon, which is almost always snow-capped. Up and up the steep slope, they followed their beloved, hopefully it's not stuck together, master they were till all were worried with the climb. At last, near the summit, Jesus stopped. They all they were ready to lie down and sleep. In fact, their eyes were so heavy with sleep that they almost missed out on the most wonderful sight in human eyes ever saw. They had often seen Jesus praying before, but never like this. His face was glowing with a glorious heavenly light. His garments were glistening as when the sun shines upon pure snow. He looked like a king, but more than a king. Yes, he looked like God. Then they saw something else that startled them. From nowhere, it seemed, 2 strangers appeared and stood by Jesus. The disciples stared at them. Could they be angels? No, they were men all right. There was no doubt about that. But who were they? And how had they come so suddenly upon this mountaintop? Excuse me. Their disciples had no way of knowing who these 2 people might be. nor had they seen any likeness of them at any time. But Jesus knew them and talked with them as if they were old friends of his, as indeed they were. One was Moses, and the other was Elijah. But were these two people dead? No. After Moses died on Mount Nebo, God raised him from the dead, as we understand from the book of Jude. As for Elijah, he never died, but was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. So here, on this mountaintop, Jesus gave his three most trusted disciples a picture of what it was going to happen in that, and then it stops for a second, and then it has a painting by Herbert Rudin of the what we call, or what they technically call, the uh, uh, trans transmutation. I think that's what they call it, but that's what they call it. And this is the painting of Jesus' transmutation, with Elijah right beside him on one side and Moses on the other. And then, of course, Peter, James, and John sitting there watching them. And they're just thinking that it was Moses. Nobody really knows who it is. This is just what the Bible says. And this, the caption here says, suddenly, while Peter, James, and John prayed on the mountainside with Jesus, he was enveloped in a dazzling light of heaven, and two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared at his side. Okay, let's get back to the story. Okay, so there on the mountaintop, Jesus gave his three most trusted disciples a picture of what is going to happen in the glorious day when he will return and set up his kingdom. One on that happy morning, he will appear in all his glory as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then all who have died believing in him will be raised to life, as Moses was, and those still living will be caught up in the clouds to meet him in the air like Elijah. I've heard that. Okay. And then it says, after a little while, Moses and Elijah vanished. When they were gone, Peter said to Jesus, let us make three booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. It was a foolish thing to say at such a time. It was a very sacred moment that this like this, it was always good to keep quiet and say nothing. Okay? Jesus didn't answer. And a moment later, a cloud came down and covered him. Presently, from the cloud came a voice rich, beautiful, and full of melody, and it said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. Thus God again claimed Jesus as his son, as he had done once before by the Jordan. Terrified, the three disciples fell on their faces. How long they stayed like this, we do not know. But by and by, each felt a familiar touch on their shoulders. Get up, said Jesus gently. Don't be afraid. They looked up and saw Jesus only. Why did Jesus let Peter, James, and John have this wonderful experience? Because he knew they would need it in the sad, trying years ahead. It might it would help to keep up their courage when his cause would appear to be lost and everything would seem to go wrong. The Prince of Teachers was right. The disciples never forgot that miracle sight on the mountain. Long years after Peter wrote about it, saying, "We," and then it has a pause, "were witness of his majesty." And John, in the first chapter of his gospel, said, "We beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father." For the rest of their lives, this was one of their most precious and sacred memories. And then it has Herbert Rudin, and it's a two-pager, and it's got the text in the middle, and it's got people in modern dress, 1950 modern dress, and then Jesus in the crown with the angels. Him coming in and shout, and those that remain. And that's the illustration. So you got Jesus with his crown and the angels. And then, since this is 1955, 55, 56, they're just going by what they have. Okay? And that was the end of part 2, story 8. So we're going to break, and then we'll be back with these next stories. See you in a little bit.